Welcome to Module 2. This is where we get started using the Qt Toolkit. Module 1 was getting us up to speed on objects. As you'll see when we start creating GUI Python programs, there are a lot of objects. Here is Module 2, and you'll notice that it covers Chapter 1 in the PyQt5 cookbook that we're using as our textbook for the class. There's one project in this 2-week module. There's also an exam project. So you will definitely want to do Project 2 this week. Don't wait till next week or you may not get everything finished. Okay, so first, why Qt? Well, there are very few toolkits where you could develop an application once and run it on anything. Qt is one of those toolkits. It makes cross-platform, meaning the same code without modification will run on a HP printer, a Tesla car, a Mac, a Linux system, and a Windows system, and lots of other computers. So here's a list of some companies that use Qt. Spotify uses it on their streaming boxes. VLC Media Player uses Qt for its program. Roku, I'm sure everyone has a Roku box probably. Autodesk, that's AutoCAD, the 3D software. A lot of its plugins are written in Qt. Here's one I bet you didn't know. Google Earth is written with Qt. The HP printer, German air traffic control systems are written in Qt. DreamWorks, the folks that make a lot of the special effects movies. Mathematica, and Samsung uses it for their e-readers and digital frames, and that's just a few. Tesla car uses it. Some of the other cars use it for the center stacks. I believe Audi is using it there as well. So, very powerful toolkit. Does things that we can't do with anything else. So, in order to use this toolkit, you must have added PyQt5 to Tani, and in Module 2 of our class, it was also in the introduction and Module 1. This is the folder that describes the steps to add PyQt5 to Tani. Basically, you click on the Tools menu item, then click on Manage Packages, and in this empty box right here, you type in PyQt5 and hit Search, and it will bring up PyQt5. You click the Install button and wait. It could take several minutes as you'll see a screen where it's showing things downloading. Once it's installed, you will get an uninstall button. I don't know if you noticed, but up here I don't have an uninstall button. Down here after it's installed, I do. So that's one way you can tell if you search on PyQt5. If you come up to a screen showing an installed version and an uninstall button, then you have it installed. So that gets us the PyQt5 toolkit for Tani. There's another piece to this. we need a program to design the UI files. Our programs, as you'll see here in just a moment, our programs consist of a UI file and a Python file. The Python file loads the UI file in when it runs. So, in order to create the UI file, the GUI part of our program, you need Qt Designer. Now, there are versions of Qt Designer for Windows, Mac, and Linux. I didn't actually add the link to install Designer on Linux, but there is one for that as well. Now, the differences between the two versions here for Windows, this one that says Qt Designer Setup is actually going to install it on your Windows system. I'm sure you've probably heard of portable apps, but this second option here for Windows just will basically download a folder that you extract. And once you've got that folder, you have Qt Designer in that folder. So that's what we call a portable app. You could actually put that folder on your flash drive and take it with you to various spots where you had Windows systems, and you just go into that folder and run the Qt Designer program. And then, of course, there's a version for the Mac OS. So that's the Qt Designer program. You're expected to read all this material. We'll be using these concepts when I start doing the video to show you how to create a program with Qt. So this part is not in your textbook, as you can see. There's some things that are mentioned in the textbook that you don't have to do. This saves you a lot of work. So read that material, and I've actually created two what I would call starter files or a template for you. There's a template, inside this folder that says a reusable template. You'll notice there are two files that you can download. GUI template.py, which is the Python code, and GUI template.ui. This is the Python code in the py file. The UI file is in the GUI template.ui. So if you download these, you can actually rename them to what your project name is supposed to be, and then go in and change the Python code so that it will load this UI file. And you have a lot of work already done for you. Here's an example of all the code that's already written for you inside that GUI template file. It has all this Python code already written. So if you download these two programs, you actually could run this GUI template.py file, and you would see a running Qt program with just a form, and that form has an exit button on it, and that's all. So this just saves you writing all this code for every program that we create for pretty much the rest of the class. So that's an important item to keep in mind, that we have these template files out there so you don't have to write everything from scratch. And that's not mentioned in your textbook either. So let's take a look at the process that we go through to and how these files are related with the Qt toolkit. Okay, so this is the way our programs are organized. You'll notice that we use that Qt Designer program that I mentioned earlier. to create or modify the UI file. We use Tani or whatever Python editor you are comfortable with to create or modify our Python code. There's a line in that Python file that does load UI, and it has the name of the UI file. So that's why you see this arrow here going from the user interface file. You notice I made this where it says red when Python code runs. So that line in that Python file right there that says load UI is what reads that user interface file into the Python program where we can use it. So here's kind of the process using Qt Designer. You open up that GUI template file that you download from Blackboard and save it as whatever program name.ui you're going to use. Then in Tani, you open up the GUI template.py file and save that as whatever program name you're going to use .py. Notice the UI has an extension of UI. The Python file has an extension of py. Still in Tani, you go into that Python file and you need to change the line that says load UI. You notice it has GUI template.ui. We just mentioned renaming GUI template up here to whatever you're going to call it in your program. So once you've done this, the Python file doesn't have the correct name in it anymore. So you need to change where it says GUI underscore template.ui to match the name that you used here in step 1. So once we've changed it as shown here, whatever your program name's going to be, you should have a runnable Python program. You can click the run button in Tani and you should see a GUI program pop up. So that's the end of this little introduction to Module 2. Make sure you read that entire Chapter 1 in the textbook. There are a lot of questions on material from that in your homework questions this week. Remember, you've got a project to create for a GUI program. Next, I'll do 2 videos, one that shows how to create a GUI template file or modify one, and then how to modify the GUI template Python file to make use of the things that we add to the GUI template. So you'll definitely want to watch the next 2 videos, one on designing the UI file and the second one on making the changes to the Python GUI template file so that you can do your project for this week. Thanks. Good luck.